Joining us now, Laurel Broten. She is the minister responsible for children and youth services and for women's issues as well. And we welcome you here to TVO.
Thank you.
First time in this new studio, I think,
It
so
is.
it's good to have
Thank
you here. December 2008, your predecessor introduces the Ontario Poverty Reduction Strategy. It's called Breaking the Cycle, and we want to just put a couple of the bullet points up to start with, just so we can bring all of our viewers up to speed on this. December 4, 2008, Ontario's Poverty Reduction Strategy is introduced. We fast forward to May 2009. The Poverty Reduction Act is passed with all-party approval, and the goal is to reduce the number of children living in poverty by 25% within 5 years. That's the year 2013. So let's just start with some background here. Do we have any idea how many children in this province live in poverty?
So we do have measurables. One of the challenges we have is that our data is old. So we know that our figure of lifting kids out of poverty, about 25%, is in around the 100, about 90,000 kids. So, but we've had some challenges with our data. So one of the things that we've had to do is put in other measurables. So not just living index, but also create an Ontario measurable about what does it mean to be poor in Ontario. So we know right now we've lifted about 400,000 kids out of poverty.
So what does it mean to be poor in Ontario today? If you don't have that first number, what do you measure?
So we have 8 measurables. School readiness, graduation rates, low income measure, some of those things existed. We've also created something where we worked with experts in Ontario to create something called the depth of poverty. What does it mean in Ontario? Did you get to, what did you eat? Did you get to go to a birthday party? Did you get that type of thing, to really understand that in Ontario, it's not going to be the same as in another country, what it means to be poor. So we have 8 measurements associated with our plan. We report on those every year. We're able to, in this second year report on some of them, but some of them our data is still too old from Statistics Canada to be able to do. But we do know that we've lifted about 400,000 kids out of poverty right now, and we know primarily that we've done that through the key part of the strategy, which is the Ontario Child Benefit.
Which has been around for how many years? That was a few budgets ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, so the Ontario Child Benefit was created after some consultations with experts and really looking at how can you lift a family out of poverty. One of the things that we know from parents of children is that they would like to go into the workforce, but they needed stability in terms of some benefits and support for their kids. So the Ontario Child Benefit stays with you as a family unit as a parent, for example, makes the decision to move from social assistance into the workplace. So it really stabilizes the income that they'll receive, and it's been a significant component of our plan in lifting kids and families out of poverty.
My hunch is people would assume that there are more kids living in poverty as a result of, the financial meltdown and the economic transformation of the last couple of years. Is that in fact the case?
So one of the things that we were very clear about in this year's report, because we are reporting publicly every year, and in December of this year we introduced our second report, that the worldwide recession is no doubt, it has affected Ontario families. And although we know that the families that receive the Ontario Child Benefit, that we've lifted them out of poverty, we also know that families have lost their jobs and that some have slipped in. And so for us, a key component is the fact that we're also working very hard on our economic progress and job recovery.
Does it feel like you're treading water at some points?
Well, I think for me and for those of us working on this, it demonstrates the clear importance of doing this work. We know that for a family that's benefiting from all-day kindergarten, the OCB, the investments we've made in Healthy Smiles, 130,000 kids now have dental care that didn't. We're lifting those families up. At the same time, we're focusing very much on job recovery, and the fact that we're at about 81% of job recovery is also a key component of a poverty reduction strategy. Is get families back into a job, help them with second career, those types of components. That's why it's 16 ministries sit at the table doing this work, because it really is comprehensive and all of us have a part of it, and I'm just privileged to be able to chair it and lead this.
I want to make sure I understand this. If there's 16 ministries that have got a piece on this, your job is to advocate for kids across all those ministries and make sure they're all rowing in the same direction. From what little I know about how government works, that's impossible to do, because your governments operate in silos. And the left hand often doesn't know what the right hand's doing. So how do you deal with that?
I've been privileged over a whole bunch of different files to be able to do some of the cross-government work, whether it was the Domestic Violence Action Plan, Climate Change Plan, the Poverty Reduction Strategy. And what it takes is we have a results table, we meet regularly, we track all of the components of the Poverty Reduction Plan and say, how are you doing on this? Where are we on this? How's it going on this? And then we pull it together and continue to advocate for that work. It's a kids first strategy, so it makes sense that it's housed in the Ministry of Children, where our focus is success for kids. And it's also, as the title says, breaking the cycle. It's really about what are we going to do for the next generation, and that's why all-day kindergarten is also a critical component. We know you break the cycle of poverty by giving kids the foundation for success that they need at the early years, maybe something that their parent didn't receive.
Okay, let me read something from a few months ago. This is called 25 and 5, Network for Poverty Reduction. The title of it is Building a Resilient Ontario. Here's an excerpt. The budget took poverty reduction a huge step back with an announcement that the special diet program would be canceled and replaced with a much more limited program. It also lacked new investments in other areas like the Ontario Child Benefit, housing affordability, employment equity, and income adequacy for people forced to rely on social assistance. The provincial budget also offered no answer to the hundreds of thousands of workers who have lost their jobs to recession and run out of EI. As we near the midway point, lack of decisive, timely initiatives to accelerate the provincial government's poverty reduction promise suggests the government may have taken its eyes off the prize.
Absolutely not. Our eyes are not off the prize. We, in this year's report, in advance of it, for example, we do speak directly to the fact that where do we go in the future? We call upon a federal partner. There's no doubt that EI and the role EI plays in lifting families out of poverty is critically important. So we've launched a social assistance review, the biggest review that's taking place in 20 years. It's going to look at what all different levels of government need to do. It's going to be chaired by Francis Lankin and Dr. Munir Sheikh. And it will pull in something like the special diet, for example, that you speak about. A decision by our government was made in December of this year to roll that into a comprehensive review. We had the Auditor General on one component criticizing the special diet, a Human Rights Tribunal on another side criticizing the special diet.
For people who are disabled, they get extra money every month to help them buy whatever it is they need to. And the Auditor General said that the program was rife with some, I don't know if you want to say it's corruption, but let's just say,
But he was critical of whether we were getting the value, whether the appropriate people were getting benefit.
We had a woman in that chair a month ago named Mary Kelly who gets the special diet, and for whom a cutback in that program, she says, and I watched her walk in here with a bag full of stuff that she needs to just to get through the day. She needs that money. Right.
So what was decided post the announcement of the budget was to make some amendments to the program to speak to the issues that the Human Rights Tribunal raised. They were well received, and then to roll the special diet component into a full and comprehensive review of social assistance.
But that's somewhere down the road, right?
That's what's taking place right now.
Okay.
So it sort of stabilized the system, froze the system, and said, you know what? We need to take a look at this in the bigger context. And so I think my conversations with Jackie and others post our announcements in December of this year were really positive. There's some very good people going to take a look at the whole program. The housing strategy was released. We all in advance of this year's report, so our eye is absolutely not off of it. We are on target. We're 2 years into the strategy. We've got 3 more years left. No doubt we were shaken, like everyone else around the world, by the worldwide recession, but we're seeing our recovery come, and it only makes us more steadfast in why we need to do this.
Let me follow up on that, because I guess another thing you learn in government is that there's a lot of it that's out of your hands. And I understand you've got goals and targets, and I understand that you need the economy to grow in order that, all boats are lifted in this economy. But you need money from the federal government to make this work, and you can't necessarily control what the economy is doing. So is it realistic to set goals which, if you're going to meet those goals, you need so many other things that are out of your hands to come through for you? So what's the point?
But if you don't have a plan and you don't have goals, all of us, it doesn't matter what you're trying to do in your personal life or your work life or government, it's all the same. Unless you have an aspirational end goal that you're trying to get to and you measure your progress, how are you going to know what you're achieving? So I think for me, the critical component about breaking the cycle was saying, we will work to an aspirational goal, 25% of kids out of poverty in 5 years. We're on track, we're reporting, we're going to have our data, and we know we need some partners. So absolutely we call upon the federal government. A wonderful report was released by the Senate this year, setting out a lot of ideas about how the federal government could advance the causes of poverty reduction across the province. Other provinces have followed Ontario's lead and are tackling this issue as well. But it is complicated and you don't control everything. But I think it's important for us to have taken the step of focusing on kids in the longer term strategy and then piece by piece putting elements in place. School nutrition programs are an example. We've quadrupled the money that we're spending on school nutrition, but it's not only about the government money. It's about the partnerships that come in place and the fact that we are now feeding, thousands and thousands of kids in partnership with the volunteer sector, grocery stores, doing that work. That's part of this strategy as well.
Let me go on a bit of a tangent here with you because October last year, David Kaplan, your colleague, used to be health minister, Liberal backbencher now, introduced a bill that would transfer responsibility for children's mental health programs out of your ministry into the Ministry of Health, where he used to be the minister and where he believes, I guess, that if you track mental health issues from the time people are young to the point where they become adults, you've got a better shot at dealing with them if it's all handled under one ministry. What's your view of that?
So I understand the desire to perhaps say all mental health should be together. But in my experience and in understanding the types of services and programs that the Ministry of Children and Youth Services funds for kids, we know that the reason we created the ministry in the first place is that kids' needs are different than adults, and particularly so when it comes to mental health issues. We have about $460 million that we spend on children's mental health programs through the Ministry of Children and Youth Services. And we deliver those services through community agencies close to home, non-stigmatized, places that parents are comfortable to bring their kids in. You might walk into one and think, is this a play group? And in fact, it will be a program to help kids with anxiety disorders. When it comes to children's mental health, the objective is to get kids' lives back on track, to challenge, help them with resilience, anxiety, anger management, a whole variety of things, and get them back on track. We do know that there will be kids and families who will have lifelong issues. And it is a focus in the work that we're currently doing with the Ministry of Health in the development of the 10-year mental health strategy to take a look at how could we better transition from the children's services to the adult services when it might be a lifelong issue. But for many, many kids and families, it is in community-based organizations getting their life back on track. And I visited many of them, and it's amazing to see the kids say how comfortable they were, and the whole goal is let kids be kids, let's manage this issue, let's help them deal with this issue, let's get them back in school and get them back on track.
If I hear you right, you're voting against David Kaplan's bill.
You know, I look forward to the debate. I always want to find ways to make the system work better for families who are needing that help, but at the same time, I want to make sure that we deliver services to kids in a way that is safe and comfortable for families to go to, and it's got to be close to home, because we know that kids who might be interfacing with the children's mental health might be some of the same kids that we have in our children's aid societies. So the Ministry of Children and Youth Services has a multitude of programs, from being a baby to being a youth and transitioning into adulthood, where our whole focus is success for kids, most opportunities, letting them be kids.
Okay, let me try that. We got a minute left, so let me finish up with this. Your ministry, while it is true, it is a standalone ministry and it does focus on youth issues, it can't possibly have the resources that whatever it is now, what's the health ministry? It's $40 billion or $47 billion, whatever it's up there. I can't imagine you have the resources that a huge ministry like health or a huge ministry like community and social services would have to bring to bear on a problem. So does that hamstring your efforts?
Our ministry's budget last year was $4.4 billion. So it's
1/10 of the health ministry.
But we really do focus on community. So there's no doubt that there's always great need, and this is a wonderful role, especially as a mom, a wonderful role to be the minister. I've always been an advocate. I consider myself to work in advocacy. There's no doubt that there's a lot of work that we need to do. We have a lot of challenges, but we know that organizations that we fund do amazing work in communities, and that's where families and kids live, and that's what's really, really important.
Okay. Laurel Broten, member for Etobicoke Lakeshore, Minister of Children and Youth Services, we thank you for coming into TVO tonight.
Thank you very much.